Hi, I'm Jamie Lim and I'm going to talk to you guys about domestic helpers in Singapore. So, what is domestic helper or worker? It refers to workers who perform domestic work for pay. These are workers work in the homes of others for pay, providing a range of domestic services like they sweep, clean, wash clothes, dishes, shop, cook, care for children or the elderly, the sick and disabled, or provide services maybe such as gardening, driving, and security. There will be 4 literature reviews that I'm going to talk about. The first one will be Maids' Concern, which is money matters and also their personal freedom. The second will be being exploited. Third will be they are being treated as punching bags. Fourth, overworking domestic helpers. So the first literature review will be Maids' Concerns, which is money matters and personal freedom. So many of us has the privilege to check out on our work environment, analyze our contract and maybe stalk our bosses to be. But domestic helpers are different. They do not have any of these privileges and they are also binded to their employers via their work visas, and also their employers have the power to terminate their contract, and the domestic helpers are being discouraged to file a complaint when they are being abused, as this might lead to also termination of their contract. And all this actually make them vulnerable to high level of stress, mental and physical strain, social isolation, which is freedom, and also lower quality of life. So there's an example. This helper has an acute appendicitis surgery but was only let go 3 days before. Her employer did not even ask her to stop making dramas when she first complained about a headache and sharp pain in her abdomen after she was asked to look over a baby. She only ended up in one of Singapore's hospitals when she was rolling in pain and asked for help from her neighbour's helper, as her employer only gave her Panadols. At the end of it, she even ended up getting dismissed by her employer abruptly, and she had to even pay her own flight back to the Philippines. Also, the money and living condition of money has been the case of headache for many helpers. Many leave their homeland in search of a better life for their families, but before they can make any gains, most of them know that they must suffer financial hardship in the first few months, as they know that they have to pay placement fees. And actually a lot of them do not know what they are actually paying for. And for those who knew, they felt that the training, food and lodging which they were given at the agencies back home were not worth the amount they are paid. And this is another example. A domestic helper said that the living condition in an Indonesian agency was horrible and not even worth 6 months worth of deduction of her salary. And also while staying at that agency for over 4 months, she ate chicken only once a month, and on good days she got to eat seasoned vegetable or chicken heads and feet. The sleeping quarter were also packed with over 20 women sleeping shoulder to shoulder on the floor, and the experience was like being in jail. Moving on to my second literature review will be being exploited in Singapore, and this is a research done by Research Across Borders shows that actually 6 over 10 of the helpers are being exploited in Singapore, and many of them have reported to use their own money to pay for their meals and other essentials that should be provided by their employer by law. There is a one-sided condition that causes grossly unequal power relation between maids and their employers, which means they are excluded from Employment Act on the basis that domestic work is unique in nature. Instead, they are covered under the Employment of Foreign Manpower Act. One example would be helpers who did not have their own room reported sleeping in storage and living rooms. One said that she was sleeping in the front balcony, and another said that she was sleeping in front of the toilet. There's another example that said that the helper had her salary deducted because her employer said that she cut the tofu wrongly. There is also 1/4 of a domestic helper reported experiencing violence from their employers. 37% of them said that there were surveillance cameras in their home. And from Singapore state courts, 26 cases of abuse against domestic helper were filed in 2014 alone, compared with 90 cases of maltreatment towards domestic workers between 2010 and 2015. The third literature review will be being treated as punching bags. Domestic helpers are being treated as punching bags to kick and humiliate, as some employers think of them as robots who do not need to eat, sleep, or even get paid. There are a handful of employees who seem to think that is perfectly acceptable to have this kind of verbal and physical abuse to one another. The first example will be one Singaporean employer was found guilty of slapping and punching his Muslim domestic worker, forcing her to bow 100 times in front of a Buddhist altar and stuffing a plastic bottle inside of her mouth. And another example would be one Singapore employer was found guilty of having punched her domestic worker so much over the course of 2-year contract that the helper had become blind on her left eye, while the right eye is also injured. The last literature review will be overworking domestic helper. As a casework report data from home, the report note that out of 2.8k complaints it received from April 2017 to 2018, close to 500 were related to overwork. And it is not common for domestic workers to report working hours that range from 16 to 18 hours a day, and in some extreme cases, even 20 hours a day. With the domestic helper not having any rest day, said the report, as there is live-in requirement for migrant domestic workers who look after the elderly or young children, that they need to be on call 24/7. Another issue with overwork include being asked to perform tasks not traditionally viewed as domestic work. For example, giving employers massage, washing their cars, or illegally working in another household or the employer's business. So these are my 3 key concepts and theories. The first one will be objectification, which says that the purpose that girls and women, more so than boys and men, are socialized to internalize an observer's perspective as their primary view of their physical selves. Second, stigmatization is a behavior or reputation which is socially discrediting in a particular way. It causes an individual to be mentally classified by others in an undesirable, rejected stereotype rather than in an acceptable, normal one. The last one would be knowledge gap. The knowledge is treated as any other commodity which is not distributed equally throughout the society, and the people at the top of the ladder has the most access to it. And the outcome and significance of my research would be the well-being, which is to improve the state of domestic helpers being comfortable, healthy, and happier with their job or employer. And second would be welfare, which is to improve the state of domestic helpers' fortune. And I'll be working with the Humanitarian Organization for Migrants Economics, also known as HOME. Who are they? HOME is a Singapore-based charity founded in 2004. HOME is dedicated to empowering and supporting migrant workers who find themselves victims of human rights violation and suffer abuse and exploitation. They provide immediate crisis intervention as well as long-term support such as education and training programs to achieve our goal of enhancing the well-being and the future economic prospects of migrant workers. And they also seek to promote the diverse voices of migrant workers in Singapore through outreach, projects, and public education on issues affecting them. In conclusion, objectification is where domestic helpers are being exploited and being treated as punching bags. And stigmatization are for workers, domestic helpers that are being overworked. And the knowledge gap is under the literature review of money matters and personal freedom of a domestic helper. So this is the end of my research, and these are the reference. Thank you.